Well, today we might be doing a little bit of a boring video, but we are getting into the numbers for 2022.
As we said, today's a bit of a boring video for those who may or may not be interested in this aspect of things, but we do track a lot of stuff as far as what comes into the house, what we spend, and so today we're going to be talking about that from the 2022 growing season. Now, this is not really a video on whether it's more cost-effective or affordable to homestead, because we don't have things like infrastructure included in this, because if we factored that, we would probably find that this is not a lifestyle that's necessarily cheaper, but money's not the only metric. So this is kind of just looking what's the actual cost versus what we brought in. And we're taking a little bit of a different approach. This isn't going to break everything down into the nitty-gritty by type of livestock, etc., because we wanted to look at it more like a whole.
I think this year, as opposed to other years, we really have just looked at how the homestead has worked, as Chris will sometimes call it, an ecosystem. Everything seems to be dependent on something else, and what we don't use never becomes waste. It feeds something else. So rather than nitpicking on each individual thing, and don't get me wrong, we have those numbers, and there may be some videos that come out about that, but as an overall, we decided that it was better to, moving forward, look at the homestead as a whole as to how much it cost us, basically, to grow and raise about 75% of our food. And I think that's where we need to focus moving forward is, as a whole, is this system working to keep us in a budget that would be somewhat similar?
Keeping in mind that we do have a bit of a philosophy of don't put all your eggs in one basket, because that's one of the inherent problems when you look at each thing on its own, that you may be looking at it at a bad year. And so it's good to keep track of it. It's good to understand it. It's good to dissect it and really get into that nitty-gritty, which we're not going to do today. But some years, one thing is going to perform amazing, and something's not. That's pretty much a rule or Murphy's Law when it comes to homesteading.
Split-second decisions on those results. Sometimes you could make a decision that really is detrimental to the homestead as a whole.
In the long term.
Just because the chickens cost $12 a pound this year instead of $8 doesn't mean that, oh, they got to go. We got to change it up. We got to do something else. It's not working. It's better to look as a whole and go, it doesn't matter, because the rabbits this year were very inexpensive for us. So they balanced what extra cost them. And actually, the chickens didn't cost us more this year. I was just throwing out an analogy.
So without further ado, we're going to get right into the numbers.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the numbers.
Yeah.
We're going to give you the big grand total number of what it costs for us on the homestead this year. Now, keep in mind, the grand total includes feeding our livestock, little things like wormers, minerals, all that sort of stuff, bedding, like shavings. It includes anything that we did in the garden, soil, seeds, containers, any of that sort of stuff we bought. It includes food that we brought into the house from the grocery store. And this is where we were really bad this year, it includes any meals that were eaten out. So in total, it cost us $14,291.53 to feed ourselves with the homestead this year. And like I said, that includes outside food sources as well, because we aren't 100% self-sufficient and probably will never be there, but we're striving to get that number better every year.
So that's sort of the grand total, but the next is going a little bit more micro, down to,
as we do,
pretty much livestock and gardens, because those are the things that produce the most food for us. For those of you who have been following us for a while, you know we do track the weight of everything that comes into the house as sort of human edible food. And we are going to use that to kind of look at what was our cost for the garden, for example, versus basically per pound of what we brought in. Totally acknowledging that that's not a really fair breakdown, because we're not going through the exercise today, at least, of looking at, what would that have cost us if we had purchased all that at the store. So this is just
we're just trying to give you the Coles Notes version of what we grew, how much it cost us, and what benefit that's bringing to the family in a whole and the homestead. This year, the garden cost us $885.73. I have my cheat notes down there, so I keep looking down. And we always are interrupted by cats around here. That's just how it goes. But basically, that garden, in exchange for that $885 invested, which included soil and all sorts of things, was 1,632 pounds of produce. Like I said, we split this into produce and protein as far as our expenses go. And $885 for that 1,600 plus pounds of food really works out to about 50 cents a pound, which is pretty darn
Pretty
sweet.
decent. Now,
I don't know too much that you can buy at the grocery anymore that is 50 cents a pound.
Now, of course, that doesn't factor in time.
No.
That's not something we can really account for well, because that would really put us...
But I think that's something as homesteaders, that's just, you just know your time is there.
You're doing the work for
you love
yourself.
it. Yeah, exactly.
And that's where it's a little different.
Yeah.
Because that's where the lifestyle side comes in.
Exactly.
But all in all, that's pretty good.
So once again, and this is the same as what we had last year, realistically, the garden, we know, the produce, hands down, is the most economical way to grow your food on the farm.
And that does include fruit trees and that sort of thing too. When we say garden, we kind of mean everything plant related.
Yes. Any fruit trees that we bought was included in that, but that does include all of that sort of stuff that we've even foraged on the property, like the apples and things like that. All that is included. So that's basically the garden produce, as we said, hands down, the most lucrative part of the homestead, I think.
But as I said, we didn't include time, and definitely the most time consuming at certain points of the year.
Most of the year. Then we look at our protein production. And to be honest, anybody that's kind of followed us the last 3 years knows we were sort of aiming, we've always been aiming for around the 600 pounds of protein produced on the homestead. Because meat, eggs, that sort of thing, because dairy would be included in that as well if we had it, but we don't.
Once dairy is included in that, it would also go up.
Yeah. Basically, we were aiming for 600 pounds of protein produced on the farm, and this year we finally made it. We were 617 pounds of protein produced on the farm,
So not
and
bad.
that's awesome because that was our ultimate goal as far as meat and egg production. So we've hit the sweet spot. Now we know we just have to figure out how to maintain that. But the big kicker was how much it cost to hit that sweet spot. We were $6,148.11 to produce that 617 pounds. So,
and there's a lot of factors for that, because
there is
the resources required to have the animals, in a very blanket statement sort of way, we all know in the last few years have been kind of rising compared to
it's a slow creep, but definitely
compared to the garden side of things, where for the most part, once you have it, you have it.
Exactly. And that's where we see that the protein has a very different conversion rate. I mean, we are basically at about $10 a pound in order to produce protein. So that's something that moving forward, we definitely want to work on. But with maintaining all of our livestock and our breeding herds and everything all included in that expense, it's not too bad for $10 grass-fed, all that spiel. So it's certainly a positive. We're not looking at that at all as negative. The one thing I will say about that as we come full circle is that this is the part that we most notice the fluctuations year to year. And that's why we've made the decision to look at it as a whole unit instead of breaking it down, because certain things cost more in some years. Like we paid a little bit more on hay this year than we did in previous years. But then we adjusted how we fed other things and cut out parts on the grain and the feed store department. And it balanced a little bit better. So as a whole, I'm loving looking at this as a complete picture. But the real kind of interesting complete picture part, I think, is our grocery consumption. In total, we spent $4,957.35 on outside sourced groceries, like from the store, that sort of thing. And this includes things like the grains. We've gone over this. We're not going to bore you with too much details on it. You guys know what we consume and what we grow and what we don't grow. And then we had the $2,300.34 spent eating out because it was, I don't know why, it was one of those years.
There's multiple reasons, and it also sounds probably worse than it is, because that's the other thing that prices are going up too.
Yes,
so.
that is something I will say is it's now, we've definitely corrected that because it's become just to go to a fast food place, not that we go to a fast food place that's maybe your generic type, but we still call it fast food. For us to eat as a family of 4 is still $80. So it's no longer the inexpensive alternative. And therefore, in the new year, we have turned over a new leaf and we're no longer going to be doing that sort of thing.
Keep that leaf turned over.
Yeah, we're gonna try our best. But when it came for the differences between 2021 and 2022 on the expense of the homestead, I'm talking garden livestock, we still had a very significant difference moving year to year. We were almost $1,500 more this year to basically feed the same livestock and grow. We actually did less food than what we did the year previous.
No, not significant. We did more on the animal side of things,
Yes.
which are the ones that are more consumptive. We did a little less on the plant side of it, which, although there's more things, one of the big factors was our issues with squash this year.
The squash did not save the world.
It's not the only thing, but
it's one of the factors.
It was one of the big factors. So it's an interesting one because we grew less, it cost us more, but really that cost again was the animals.
Yes. Yeah. Hands down.
Compared to the garden.
Yeah.
So.
But the animals also bring you a far more valuable product. In our eyes, in the end. I mean, it's something that to go to the grocery store, and we still do. We go to the grocery store and you browse around that outer loop and look at the prices of the meat and the things like that and go, boy, I'm glad I raised that. So it certainly makes sense. Even if the cost is creeping up, I still feel that growing it at the $10 a pound and maintaining our flock and herd and everything else is fantastic.
And technically, we can only get better.
Yes.
Hypothetically, we can only get better.
I can't stress that more. Keeping records is so important because you see where the shortfalls are. You see the areas you could improve. You really can notice also the areas where outside forces are changing things and you have no control over that.
Mm-hmm. Or limited control without making significant changes.
Exactly. I mean, I can't source the product, the wheat, the whatever, for less, the shavings. That's not something I produce and I can't get it cheaper. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting on that front for those type of things. But the big overall take home on this is the average cost for a family of 4 in Canada is $14,485 a year. That's the average cost to feed a family of 4 in Canada. And we ran our homestead, ate out way more than we should have, still bought stuff at the grocery store, still have way more food than we need. Not that that's a bad thing.
It's a good problem to have.
And we still did it for almost $200 under the budget of what a normal family would. Mm-hmm. And I do feel that the benefits it brings to your lifestyle and all that other stuff, which we're not going to go too down that rabbit hole at the moment, certainly balance out the, money that is spent. So does it save?
Well, it does because you're not factoring in quality at all, which
exactly
that balloons this big time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much the breakdown. Well, as we said, we're not going to do videos on everything, breaking everything down, but there will be a few coming in the near future. I think the ones that make the most sense because we've got the most data, or they fit nicely into a year time frame. Mm-hmm. Because that's one thing I'm going to say it. Like our sheep, it's a little bit the time frame is a little more than a calendar year, so it's harder to get a really good handle on it because it's a bit bigger. But without digressing too much there, stay tuned. There will be a few more where we kind of incorporate this data where it is appropriate and makes sense.
Love data.
Well, data is useful, and if you have the data, like you said, you can see the shortcomings, analyze it, and see what you could maybe do differently, or also see what you're doing really well.
And it's nice to see those things.
It is.